That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The air at Fort Harlan hung heavy with the scent of dew-soaked earth and diesel exhaust, the kind that clung to your uniform long after reveille. Dawn light filtered through the chain-link fences surrounding the K9 training grounds, casting long shadows over the gravel paths. Sergeant Elena Vasquez stood at attention, her boots planted firmly in the damp soil, hands clasped behind her back. At 34, she was a veteran handler in the 101st Military Police Battalion, her dark hair pulled into a tight bun beneath her patrol cap. Beside her, Rex, her German shepherd partner of 9 years, sat motionless, his black and tan coat still holding the faint musk of last night's kennel straw. Rex's eyes, sharp and unblinking, tracked the movements of the other teams assembling for the morning drill. "Platoon, attention!" barked Captain Harlan Reed, the unit commander, his voice cutting through the low hum of idling Humvees. Reed was a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s, his face etched with the lines of too many deployments. He paced the front of the formation, his polished boots crunching against the gravel. 20 handlers and their dogs formed neat rows, the animals responding to invisible cues, ears perked, tails still. This was the rhythm of base life, precision, repetition, unbreakable chain of command. Vasquez felt the familiar pull in her shoulders, the weight of her duty belt, as she locked eyes forward. Loyalty here wasn't just to the flag, it was to the partner at your heel, the one who could scent danger before the wind carried it. The drill commenced with standard obedience exercises. Handlers issued commands in clipped tones: sit, stay, heel, while the dogs moved as extensions of their masters. Rex performed flawlessly, his aging joints betraying no weakness as he heeled at Vasquez's left, his nose twitching at phantom scents in the breeze. But Vasquez knew the truth. At 10 years old, Rex was past his prime by regulation standards. Army protocol mandated retirement for K9s after 8 years of active service, or sooner if mobility faltered. He'd been flagged in the last vet check, mild arthritis in his hind legs, a slight hesitation on long runs. Vasquez had appealed once, citing his flawless record, tracking insurgents in Afghanistan, alerting to IEDs in Iraq, but the paperwork had come back stamped: reassignment to breeding program or retirement. "Handler Vasquez," Reed called out during a brief pause, his gaze settling on her. The platoon held position, the only sounds the distant whir of a Black Hawk warming up on the airstrip and the soft pant of dogs catching their breath. Vasquez snapped to parade rest. "Report on Rex's status." "Sir, he's cleared for light duty," she replied, her voice steady, though her fingers tightened imperceptibly at her sides. "Vet notes show he's responsive and alert." Reed nodded curtly, flipping through a clipboard. "Regulations are clear, Sergeant. He's overdue for rotation. We've got younger stock coming in from Lackland. Fresh blood, no liabilities." He glanced at Rex, who remained statue still, sensing the shift in tone. "Effective end of week. You'll transition to Shadow. Rex goes to the kennel for eval." A murmur rippled through the ranks, quickly stifled. Vasquez's jaw set, but she held her response. Shadow was a 2-year-old Malinois, eager but unproven, assigned to her after months of observation. Rex had been her constant through 3 tours, his nose saving her squad more times than she could count. The bond wasn't sentiment. It was survival, forged in the dust of Helmand Province, where Rex had once pulled her from a collapsing wadi after a blast. To hand him off felt like severing a limb. The drill resumed, handlers pairing off for scent work. Vasquez led Rex to the mock urban course, a series of plywood structures simulating alleyways, laced with hidden odor canisters. "Such," she commanded softly. Search in German, their operational language. Rex moved forward, his gait measured but sure, nose low to the ground. The platoon watched as he navigated the obstacles, pausing at a buried decoy explosive scent. His bark was sharp, authoritative, drawing nods from the observers. But as they circled back, Reed pulled her aside near the water troughs, where the metallic tang of trough water mixed with the earthy dampness. "This isn't personal, Vasquez," he said, lowering his voice. The other handlers kept their distance, eyes forward, respecting the hierarchy. "Unit readiness comes first. Rex served honorably, but we can't risk him on a real op. Paperwork's already in motion." "Sir, with respect, he's not a risk," Vasquez countered, her tone even, eyes meeting his without challenge. "His alerts are still 98% accurate. Retiring him now, it's premature." Reed's expression hardened, the lines around his mouth deepening. "Premature? The brass in D.C. sets these standards for a reason. Liability, insurance, the works. You think I like benching a dog like him? But orders are orders." He paused, glancing at Rex lapping water, his muzzle graying at the edges. "Focus on Shadow. Prove her out. That's your duty now." Vasquez saluted, crisp and precise, but as she turned back to formation, a knot formed in her chest. The morning sun climbed higher, baking the ground, and the distant crackle of radio chatter from the command tent underscored the routine. Yet beneath it all, the air felt charged, like the static before a storm. She knelt to Rex's level, running a hand along his flank, feeling the steady rise and fall of his ribs. He leaned into her touch, a silent affirmation. In the world of ranks and protocols, this bond was the one unyielding truth. As the platoon broke for chow, Vasquez lingered, watching the other dogs trot beside their handlers. The base stirred to life, mechanics clanging under hoods, sentries changing post with echoing boots on concrete. No one spoke of the decision aloud. Dissent simmered in silences, in the extra scratch behind Rex's ears. But Vasquez knew this was just the beginning. Regulations were the backbone of their world, but conscience had a way of testing every seam. Later that afternoon, during equipment inventory in the armory, the sharp scent of oiled rifles and leather holsters filling the air, a call came over the tactical net. Static hissed from the speaker. "All units, stand by for alert. Civilian incident reported. Possible lost child in the Harlan National Forest. Wildfire activity increasing, SAR teams mobilizing." Vasquez froze, her hand on a crate of tracking vests. The forest bordered the base, a vast stretch of pine and underbrush prone to summer blazes. Reed's voice followed. "K9 units, prep for deployment. Vasquez, you're on standby with Shadow." She glanced at Rex, kennelled nearby, his head lifting at the urgency in the air. "Stand by," the word echoed like a dismissal. As the handlers scrambled, vests snapping, leads clipping, the weight of the morning's orders pressed heavier, duty called, but at what cost? The command tent buzzed with controlled urgency, the air thick with the acrid bite of fresh coffee grounds and the faint ozone hum of tactical radios. Maps unrolled across the folding table, marked with red grease pencil lines tracing the Harlan National Forest's winding trails. Captain Reed stood at the center, his finger jabbing at a satellite photo showing smoke plumes curling from the eastern ridge. Incident Command reports a 6-year-old male, last seen near the trailhead at 1400 hours. Parents say he wandered off chasing a squirrel, fires moving fast, winds at 15 knots, visibility dropping. Handlers nodded in unison, their faces set in the disciplined masks of readiness. Vasquez stood at the edge of the group, Shadow at her heel, the young Malinois fidgeting slightly, her ears flicking at every crackle from the net. Shadow was sharp, trained in basic tracking, but untested in heat and chaos. Rex remained in his kennel outside, separated by protocol, his low whine barely audible through the canvas flap. Vasquez's pulse thrummed steady, but her mind raced. Rex's nose had pulled miracles from worse: ash-choked villages, monsoon-slick jungles. This was no drill. A child's life hung in the balance, and the forest was turning into an inferno. Assignments, Reed continued, his voice a steady anchor. Team Alpha, Peterson and Duke, primary search on the lower trails. Beta, Martinez and Luna flank the riverbed. Vasquez, you're with Gamma on the ridge overlook. Shadow's got the scent profile from the boy's shirt. Civilians are holding at the perimeter. No heroics. We link with Forest Service choppers at 1700 for aerial support. Yes, sir, Vasquez replied, her tone clipped, snapping a salute as the group dispersed. She clipped Shadow's tracking vest, the nylon straps whispering against the dog's sleek coat, and loaded the sample into the harness pouch. The scent was faint, cotton and child sweat, mixed with the metallic tang of the evidence bag. As she led Shadow to the Humvee convoy, the base perimeter came alive, engines rumbling to life, tires crunching over gravel, the distant wail of sirens from the fire crews. Soldiers moved with purpose, load-bearing vests slung low, canteens sloshing. This was the machine at work, ranks interlocking like gears, no room for doubt. The drive to the trailhead took 20 minutes, the Humvee bouncing over rutted access roads, dust devils swirling in the rear view. Vasquez sat in the passenger seat, radio handset in her lap, monitoring chatter. Dispatch, Alpha en route, winds shifting northwest. Shadow panted softly in the crate behind her, alert but green, her tail thumping once against the metal. Vasquez's fingers drummed the armrest, uncharacteristically restless. Reed's orders echoed, stand by with Shadow. But as the vehicle crested the ridge, the smoke hit like a wall, bitter choking, blotting the late afternoon sun. The forest loomed, pines skeletal against the haze, embers flickering like distant gunfire. At the staging area, a makeshift command post amid the chaos of fire engines and ranger trucks, Vasquez reported in. The air reeked of charred wood and hydraulic fluid, boots sinking into ash-dusted soil. Reed was already there, coordinating with a grizzled Forest Service incident commander, their maps fluttering in the gusts. Vasquez, take the east flank. Shadow's profile should hold in this soup. Report contacts every 15. Sir, she acknowledged, but her eyes flicked to the kennel truck parked nearby, a standard rig for overflow gear, where Rex had been loaded as a precaution, per regs. The handlers weren't supposed to bring retired assets into the field, but Vasquez had slipped his travel crate aboard during the scramble, citing backup equipment. It was a grey area, one that could earn her a reprimand, but the wildfire's roar drowned out second thoughts. She knelt by Shadow, securing the GPS collar. Such girl, find him. The dog nosed the pouch, committing the scent, then strained toward the tree line. The search began in earnest. Vasquez and 2 rangers pushed into the underbrush, Shadow leading on a long lead, her paws padding silently over needles and smouldering leaves. The heat pressed in, a dry furnace that made sweat bead under Vasquez's helmet. Radio static punctuated the silence. Beta, negative on river, pushing north. Shadow worked methodically, circling burned patches, her nose questing low. But after 30 minutes, frustration crept in. The fire's smoke layered everything, distorting trails, and Shadow hesitated at false positives, barking at scorched roots that mimicked the boy's path. Vasquez wiped soot from her face, the grit stinging her eyes. Good girl, she murmured, though doubt gnawed. Rex would cut through this, his experience past chaos where youth faltered. A gust carried fresh smoke, and Shadow whined, pulling back. The rangers exchanged glances. One, a wiry woman with a scarred cheek, muttered, "She's solid, but this wind's killing the line." Back at the perimeter, as dusk bled into the sky, Vasquez requested a break. The team regrouped near the vehicles, water bottles passed hand to hand, the metallic clink of carabiners the only sound. Reed approached, his uniform streaked with ash. Status? Shadow's picking up traces, sir, but the interference, it's muddying her. Vasquez said, keeping her voice level. She's doing her job, but Rex, his calibration's tighter in low vis. He's right here, sir. One run, that's all I ask. Reed's jaw tightened, the firelight casting harsh shadows on his face. Negative, Sergeant. He's off the roster. We don't bend regs in the field. Creates liability, shadows your asset. Double the grid if you have to. The words landed like a slap, but Vasquez held her ground, her posture ramrod straight. Around them, the forest crackled, flames licking higher, the distant thump of helicopter rotors, a promise of aid too slow. The other handlers paused in their tasks, ears tuned, the weight of the moment settling. Peterson, from Alpha, shot her a subtle nod, solidarity unspoken. Rex's crate rattled faintly from the truck, as if he sensed the impasse. Vasquez saluted, turning back to the line, but the knot in her chest twisted tighter. Duty demanded obedience, the chain unyielding, yet as Shadow strained again into the haze, her alerts faltering, Vasquez's hand hovered near her radio. Conscience whispered louder than orders now, a quiet defiance building amid the roar. The boy was out there, miles deep in the burn, and time was ash. She glanced at the kennel truck, Rex's outline visible in the fading light, his head cocked toward the smoke. The test had come, not in a drill, but in the heart of the blaze. Follow the line, or trust the bond that had carried her through hell. As night fell, the search intensified, spotlights piercing the gloom, the air alive with urgency. Vasquez pushed forward, Shadow at her side, but her mind mapped the breach. A single act, slipping the lead, letting Rex prove what regs couldn't measure. The forest waited, indifferent, its secrets buried in the heat. The flames clawed higher into the night sky, their orange glow painting the treetops in flickering silhouettes against the stars. Vasquez's boots crunched through layers of ash and brittle pine needles as she led Shadow back toward the staging area. The young dog's lead slack in her gloved hand. The air was a choking veil, laced with the sharp tang of superheated sap and the underlying rot of damp earth unearthed by the fire's advance. Radio chatter crackled incessantly from her vest pocket. Gamma, report position. Winds shifting. Fire line breaching Sector 3. Her team's grid search had yielded nothing but false trails. Shadow's nose overwhelmed by the acrid overload, circling the same scorched clearing twice without commitment. Vasquez's breath came steady, disciplined, but her mind churned. The boy's scent profile was fading fast in this inferno. Every minute the wildfire pushed deeper, turning miles of forest into a labyrinth of heat and shadow. Reed's denial echoed like a locked gate. Regs first, always, but she'd seen Rex work through worse. The smoke-shrouded alleys of Fallujah, where he'd locked onto a hidden cache amid burning debris. He wasn't a liability. He was precision forged in fire. As the Humvee's headlights swept the perimeter, illuminating the kennel truck's silhouette, Vasquez made her choice. Not rebellion, but necessity, a quiet breach of protocol, born of the bond that no order could sever. She waited until the Rangers peeled off for resupply, their silhouettes vanishing into the haze toward the command post. The staging area hummed with low activity, engines idling, firefighters uncoiling hoses with metallic hisses, the distant throb of chopper blades slicing the air. Vasquez approached the truck, her steps measured, heart rate controlled as if prepping for a patrol. The latch clicked softly under her fingers, and she slid the side panel open. Rex lifted his head from the straw bedding, his dark eyes locking onto hers without a sound. No bark, no fuss, just that steady gaze, reading the urgency in her posture. "Easy, boy," she whispered, clipping a field lid to his collar. His vest was already stowed nearby. She fastened it with practiced efficiency, the Velcro rasping like a secret shared. Leading him out, Vasquez kept to the truck's shadow, the vehicle's bulk shielding them from the main cluster of lights. Rex moved with purpose, his paws silent on the cooling ground, nose already questing upward into the smoke. She didn't radio it in. No time for debate, no room for veto. This was her test, duty to the mission over the chain. Compassion overriding the ink on a form. As they slipped toward the east flank trailhead, Shadow trailed at heel, unprotesting, as if sensing the shift. The forest edge loomed, a wall of smoldering undergrowth, embers drifting like fireflies on the gusts. "Such!" Vasquez commanded, her voice low and firm, presenting the scent pouch to Rex first. He inhaled deeply, committing it in one deliberate pull. Cotton, sweat, innocence, then surged forward, his gait steady despite the faint hitch in his step. Shadow followed, deferring to the elder dog's lead. The trio pushed into the burn zone, the heat radiating from blackened trunks like an open kiln. Vasquez's flashlight beam cut narrow paths through the gloom, illuminating twisted roots and fallen branches that snapped underfoot. Rex wove methodically, pausing to clear false scents, a charred backpack discarded by hikers, the acrid residue of wildlife fleeing the blaze. His alerts were crisp, a low rumble for distractions, silence for the true line. Minutes stretched into an hour, the trail steepening as they climbed the ridge. Sweat soaked Vasquez's uniform, the salt stinging her eyes, but she pressed on, radio silenced in her pocket. Rex's nose stayed low, navigating the thermal updrafts that twisted the air. Then, a shift. His ears perked, body tensing as he locked onto a faint trace, weaving through a narrow defile. Vasquez's pulse quickened. This was it, the boy's path veering off the marked trails, toward a ravine where the fire hadn't fully taken hold. "Good track," she murmured, her hand brushing his flank for reassurance. Shadow whined softly, mirroring the intensity, but Rex led unerringly, his experience passing the chaos where youth hesitated. Deeper in, the forest thickened, smoke pooling in low pockets that forced them to their knees. Vasquez's knee pads ground against the soil, the earthy dampness a brief respite from the overhead blaze. Rex halted abruptly at a cluster of boulders, nosing a small, mud-caked sneaker half buried in leaves. The scent bloomed fresh here, unburned, recent. "Contact," she radioed finally, her voice breaking the silence, position only, no details. The response came sharp. "Vasquez, confirm asset. You're not cleared for solo push." But she was committed now, the line drawn in ash. Rex circled the site, barking once, short, urgent, indicating the boy had climbed higher, seeking escape from the heat. Vasquez followed, scrambling up the rocks, her boots slipping on loose scree. The ravine opened to a ledge, overlooking a shallow stream, its waters choked with debris but untouched by flame. There, huddled against a fallen log, was the child, 6 years old, face streaked with soot, knees drawn to his chest, eyes wide in the flashlight's glare. "Hey, kid," Vasquez said softly, holstering her light, keeping her movements slow. "Army, you're safe now." The boy nodded mutely, shivering despite the ambient heat, as Rex approached gently, nosing his hand without demand. Shadow sat alert nearby, a quiet sentinel. Vasquez keyed her radio. "Gamma actual, visual on subject, East Ravine Chords 3412 North, send medevac." The extraction was textbook, rangers rappelling in with harnesses, the boy secured and lifted skyward amid the rotor wash. Vasquez watched from below, Rex at her side, the dog's tongue lolling in quiet satisfaction. But as the chopper faded into the smoke, Reed's voice cut through the net. "Vasquez, report to command post, immediately." The return trek felt longer, the adrenaline ebbing into a hollow fatigue. At the staging area, dawn's first light grayed the horizon, casting long shadows over the cooling embers. Reed waited by the fire line, arms crossed, his expression a mask of controlled fury. Peterson and Martinez flanked him, their dogs kennelled nearby, eyes averted but attentive. "Sergeant," Reed began, his tone even, the chain reasserting itself. "You took Rex into the field without authorization." Vasquez stood at attention, mud caking her boots, Rex sitting precisely at heel. "Sir, the track was viable. The boy—" "Save the rationale," he interrupted, though his gaze flicked to Rex, a flicker of something unspoken. Respect, perhaps, or reluctance. Regs exist for a reason. You bypassed the roster, risked the unit's liability. Witnesses saw you slip the truck. This goes up the ladder. Investigation starts now. The words hung heavy, the morning air crisp with dew over ash. Handlers gathered at a distance. Murmurs stifled the weight of the breach rippling through the ranks. Vasquez saluted, her posture unyielding, but inside, the cost tallied. Her career on the line, the bond with Rex vindicated yet perilous. As medics wheeled the boy past on a stretcher, alert, dehydrated but alive, the forest smoldered on, indifferent to the reckoning. Loyalty had won the night, but the institution demanded its due. The test wasn't over. It was just beginning to burn. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The morning after the rescue dawned clear and brittle, the forest's smoke lingering like a haze over Fort Harlan's parade grounds. Vasquez stood before the assembled platoon in the armory briefing room, the air heavy with the scent of polished brass and fresh-inked reports. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows on the cinder-block walls lined with locked cabinets and faded unit plaques. Rex sat at her heel, his coat brushed clean but his eyes watchful, sensing the undercurrent of scrutiny. Captain Reed paced the front, clipboard in hand, his boots echoing on the linoleum like measured judgments. "Incident recap," Reed began, his voice carrying the clipped authority of command. The handlers, 18 in total, sat in folding chairs, postures rigid, dogs kennelled outside with muffled whines filtering through the vents. Civilian extraction successful, subject stable at base clinic, Forest Service credits K9 assets. He paused, gaze settling on Vasquez, but protocol was breached. "Sergeant Vasquez, you'll address the platoon." Vasquez rose, her uniform pressed despite the night's grime, saluting before stepping forward. Her hands remained at her sides, fingers steady. No tremor, no plea. At 2200 hours, during active search in Sector East, I deployed Rex without prior clearance. Shadow's initial track faltered due to environmental interference. Rex confirmed the viable line, leading to visual contact, no injuries to personnel or assets. She met each handler's eyes in turn, the room silent save for the distant hum of a generator. Peterson nodded subtly from the back row. Martinez's jaw tightened, a flicker of shared understanding. Reed interjected, his tone even but firm. "This wasn't a solo decision, Sergeant. It exposed the unit to liability, unauthorized field use of a retired asset. JAG's been notified, full investigation pending." Murmurs stirred, quickly quelled by glares from the NCOs. The chain of command reasserted itself, invisible threads pulling tight. Vasquez returned to her seat, Rex leaning against her leg, his warmth a quiet anchor amid the formality. By midday, the investigation unfolded in the commandant's office, a Spartan space overlooking the training fields where fresh drills echoed like distant thunder. Colonel Marcus Hale, the battalion commander, sat behind a scarred oak desk, his silver eagles glinting under the desk lamp. Flanking him were Reed and a JAG officer, Lieutenant Carla Nguyen, her notebook open to crisp white pages. The air smelled of aged paper and black coffee, steam curling from mugs untouched. Vasquez entered at attention. Rex permitted entry as evidence, settling beside her with a soft huff. "State your actions, Sergeant," Hale directed, his voice gravelly from years of field commands. No preamble. Procedure was the shield here. Vasquez recounted the night methodically. The staging area, chaos. Shadow's hesitations, the decision at the kennel truck. "Sir, the fire line was advancing. Time critical. Rex's experience outweighed the risk. She kept her gaze forward, detailing timestamps, chords, and outcomes, the boy's safe extraction, no collateral issues. Rex shifted once, nose twitching at the coffee's bitterness, but remained still, his presence a living testament. Nguyen jotted notes, her pen scratching like radio static. Regulations under AR 19014 are explicit. Active duty K9s only on roster. Retirement at 8 years or medical flag. You knowingly violated that. Understood, ma'am, Vasquez replied, her tone level. But the mission succeeded. Rex's alert rate held at protocol standards. Hale leaned forward, steepling his fingers. Success doesn't excuse breach. Sergeant, this sets precedent. Handlers second-guessing orders in the field. We lose cohesion. His eyes flicked to Rex, lingering on the dog's steady form. The boy lives because of it, but the system's not built on exceptions. Reed remained silent, his expression neutral, though Vasquez caught the subtle crease in his brow, a man weighing loyalty against the ledger. The questioning stretched into the afternoon. Witnesses called in rotation, rangers confirming the track's precision, Peterson testifying to the smoke's interference on younger dogs. Outside, the base routine persisted, trucks rumbling past with loads of fire-retardant gear, sentries snapping salutes at the gate, but whispers spread through the mess hall, where handlers gathered over MREs, the clatter of trays underscoring hushed debates. She saved the kid, one murmured, fork paused mid-air. But regs are regs. Could cost her the stripe. Vasquez was dismissed pending review, assigned administrative duty, inventorying gear in the supply shed, the metallic tang of lubricants and canvas filling her nostrils. Rex worked beside her, nosing crates for misplaced items, his movements unhurried. She scratched behind his ears during a lull, feeling the rough texture of his fur, the faint tremor of age. "We did right," she said softly, more to herself. No regret in her voice, only the quiet resolve of one who'd stared down worse odds. That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the barracks in gold, Reed summoned her to the officers' club patio, a rare off-protocol space overlooking the cooling fields where dogs romped in twilight. The air carried the scent of grilled rations and distant pine, the forest smoke finally thinning. He handed her a water, condensation beading on the bottle. Jags pushing for reprimand, loss of clearance, maybe reassignment. Hales reviewing Rex's full record. Vasquez nodded, twisting the cap. "Understood, sir, it was my call." Reed sighed, leaning on the railing, his silhouette sharp against the fading light. "Damn it, Vasquez, you know I respect the bond. Rex pulled my ass out in Kandahar '09. Don't think I forgot." He glanced at the dog, who sat alert nearby, ears perked. "But this ripples. Brass in D.C. sees it as insubordination. Who could drag the whole K9 program into audit?" The admission hung between them, a crack in the hierarchy's armor. Vasquez met his eyes, seeing the moral tangle mirrored back. Duty to the unit clashing with the truth of what Rex represented. "Sir, if it means reform, updating the age protocols, testing veterans in sims, then the ripple's worth it." He straightened, the captain's mask slipping back. "Don't count on it. Report for hearing tomorrow, 0800. As she saluted and turned away, Rex rising fluidly to follow, the patio lights flickered on, illuminating the path ahead. The base settled into night routine, boots on gravel, low conversations in the chow line, the soft patter of paws in the kennels. Vasquez's defiance had cracked the surface, drawing eyes from higher echelons, JAG files circulating, memos drafted in quiet offices far removed from the field's grit. In the barracks, alone with her thoughts, Vasquez reviewed the day's logs by flashlight, the beam dancing over entries of alerts and outcomes. Rex curled at the foot of her bunk, his breathing even, a rhythmic reminder of the stake. The investigation wasn't just about her, It probed the system's seams when experience trumped expiration dates, when conscience tested the chain. Word had reached the clinic, where the boy's parents left a note, gratitude scrawled in shaky script, attached to a drawing of a dog in a vest. Vasquez folded it away, the paper crinkling softly. Legacy brewed in such silences, actions echoing beyond the tribunal's gavel. As Réveillé loomed, the bass stirred faintly. Radios warming, coffee perking in the galley. The reckoning spread. Handlers aligning in quiet support, the platoon's pulse quickening. Vasquez lay awake, staring at the ceiling's cracks, Rex's warmth grounding her. The cost of integrity mounted, but so did its weight, institutional eyes turning, precedents shifting like sand under boot. The forest's embers had cooled, but this fire, born of loyalty, burned steady. The hearing convened at 800 sharp in the battalion's conference hall, a low-ceilinged room tucked behind the command offices, its walls panelled in varnished oak, scarred by years of pinned maps and duty rosters. Sunlight slanted through narrow windows, dust motes dancing in the beams like distant flares, while the air held the faint, institutional scent of floor wax and recirculated ventilation. Vasquez entered flanked by her appointed advocate, a junior JAG captain named Ellis, his briefcase clutched like a shield. Rex trotted at her heel on a short lead, permitted as a non-speaking witness, his nails clicking softly on the tile. The panel sat elevated at a long table, Colonel Hale at center, Reed to his left. Nguyen scribbling preliminaries. A court reporter's keyboard tapped rhythmically, capturing every word for the record. "Sergeant Vasquez, state your plea," Hale intoned, his gravel voice echoing slightly off the walls. No ceremony. This was procedure, the machinery of accountability grinding forward. "No contest on the breach, sir," Vasquez replied, standing at ease but alert, her uniform starched to creases. "I deployed Rex to fulfill the mission objective." Rex settled beside her, ears forward, attuned to the room's tension, the subtle shifts in posture, the rustle of papers. Ellis cleared his throat, laying out exhibits, time-stamped GPS logs from the ravine, Forest Service after-action reports praising the track's efficiency. The action saved a civilian life. Colonel, no harm to assets or personnel. But Nguyen countered swiftly, her voice measured, flipping to AR 190-14. Intent matters less than precedent. Unauthorized use undermines unit discipline. What if every handler deems regs optional in extremis? The questioning drilled deeper, Hale's eyes narrowing as he probed timelines. You bypassed Captain Reed at the staging area. Explain the rationale beyond sentiment. Vasquez met his gaze steadily, recounting the smoke's interference. Thermal layers, scrambling shadows alerts, the fire's advance clocking at 2 miles per hour. Rex's olfactory calibration, sir, proven in classified ops, 98% in low-vis conditions. Delaying for clearance risked the subject. Rex shifted once, a low huff escaping, as if underscoring her words. The panel leaned in, the room's hum broken only by the reporter's keys and the distant bark of a training dog outside. Witnesses filtered in through the morning, their testimonies layering the case like strata of soil. First, Ranger Harlan from the Forest Service, his fire-scarred hands clasped on the stand, uniform dusted with residual ash. Saw the dog work, old fella but locked on like a laser, cut through what our tech couldn't. He nodded to Rex, respect in the gesture, before Nguyen pressed, "Did you verify authorization?" Harlan paused, boots scraping the floor. "Negative, ma'am, but results spoke." Peterson followed, the alpha handler, his duke kennelled in the hall with muffled whines seeping under the door. Shadows solid, but the haze. It muddied her line. Vasquez didn't hesitate, pushed the grid solo after. Reed's testimony came last, his posture rigid as he faced Hale. I denied the request for liability reasons. Sergeant's initiative succeeded, but it erodes command integrity. His voice held no malice, only the weight of the chain. Eyes flicking to Vasquez with a mix of frustration and unspoken acknowledgement. The room grew warmer, vents whispering cool air that carried the faint metallic tang from the adjacent armory. By noon, the hearing recessed for deliberations, the panel withdrawing to Hale's office amid the clatter of chairs and rustling files. Vasquez waited in the antechamber, a Spartan space with metal benches and faded recruitment posters curling at the edges. Rex lay at her feet, head on paws, his breathing even amid the low buzz of base activity filtering through. Humvees rumbling past, the sharp crack of rifle drills on the range. Ellis paced, reviewing notes. They're weighing policy here, not just you. K-9 retirement standards haven't been audited since 15. Your case could flag it. Vasquez nodded, fingers absently tracing Rex's collar, the leather worn smooth from years of service. No tremor in her touch. This was the cost she'd tallied, the spotlight of scrutiny, careers intersecting like patrol routes. Handlers lingered outside, pretending to check gear, their glances supportive but silent. Martinez slipping her a canteen, Peterson murmuring, "Hold the line!" The platoon's loyalty simmered beneath the surface, a quiet current challenging the hierarchy's flow. Deliberations stretched into the afternoon, the sun arcing high, baking the asphalt outside where heat waves shimmered off parked vehicles. Coffee trays arrived, the bitter aroma mingling with the hall's staleness, mugs clinking as aides served. Vasquez reviewed her own logs mentally, every alert, every op where Rex had tipped the scales, while Rex dozed lightly, one ear cocked toward the closed door. The weight tested restraint, the institutional gears turning slow, deliberate. Hale reconvened them at 1500, the panel's faces unreadable, Nguyen's notebook closed. Findings, breach confirmed. Reprimand on record, 30 days restriction to base, temporary suspension of field handler duties. Hale's tone brooked no appeal, but he paused, gaze settling on Rex. However, commendation for the rescue, and a recommendation, battalion-wide review of K-9 age protocols. Sergeant, your actions merit consideration for policy input. The words landed like a measured volley, punishment tempered by reform's seed. Reed's shoulders eased fractionally, Nguyen jotting a final note. Vasquez saluted crisply. Understood, sir. No elation, only the disciplined acceptance of consequence, Rex rising fluidly as they exited. Outside, the parade ground stretched under a vast sky, boots drilling in the distance, the wind carrying the clean scent of mowed grass over lingering smoke. Handlers converged subtly, nods exchanged, the ripple spreading, memos drafted for higher command, whispers in the mess about auditing vet checks. Vasquez led Rex toward the kennels, his pace steady, the bond unbroken amid the system's slow pivot. Integrity's price was steep, but it carved paths, toward updated regs, toward honoring service beyond expiration dates. The base thrummed on, ranks realigning, the quiet reform taking root in the discipline of the day. The days following the hearing blurred into a regimented haze at Fort Harlan, the base's rhythm unbroken by the undercurrents of change. Vasquez reported to administrative duties each morning at 600, her boots echoing through the supply depot's concrete corridors, the air thick with the oiled scent of stacked crates and canvas tarps. Rex remained at her side, his lead clipped short during inventories, nose questing over manifests, as if scenting discrepancies in the ledgers. The reprimand confined her to quarters after 1800, no field exercises, no patrols, just the quiet grind of paperwork, her hands smudged with ink from logging gear rotations. Shadow trained with a junior handler now, the young Malinois' eager barks drifting from the fields like echoes of what Vasquez had lost. Word of the incident spread beyond the platoon's murmurs, carried on the base's invisible networks. Emails forwarded from JAG to Pentagon liaisons, after-action reports annotated with Hale's recommendation. In the mess hall, over trays of reheated rations, the metallic tang of canned vegetables mingling with fresh-baked bread, handlers spoke in low tones. "Brass is auditing K9 protocols," Peterson confided one evening, his fork scraping the plate. "Your log's the catalyst. Rex's metrics from 09 Ops pulled for review." Vasquez nodded, her expression neutral, sipping water from a dented canteen. No gloating. This was the ripple, actions etching into the system's stone. By week's end, the call came from Colonel Hale's office, the summons delivered via a runner's clipped heels on the barracks hallway. Vasquez entered the familiar space, Rex settling at her feet amid the scent of polished wood and cooling coffee dregs. Hale stood by the window overlooking the training grounds, where fresh snow dusted the obstacle course, the winter wind whispering through the pines. Reed flanked him, arms crossed, while a civilian consultant, Dr. Elena Torres from the Army Research Lab, sat with a tablet, her glasses reflecting the desk lamp's glow. "Sergeant," Hale began, gesturing to a chair. "The reviews escalated. DC wants input on veteran K9 retention. Your testimony's central." No warmth in his tone, just the procedural weight of hierarchy bending under scrutiny. Torres leaned forward, her voice measured, professional. "We've analyzed Rex's field data. Alert accuracy holds at 96% post 8 years, outperforming 20% of active units in simulated low-vis. But Regs lag. Last update was pre-drone integration." Vasquez sat straight, hands on knees, Rex's ear twitching at the shift in air pressure from the heat events. "Ma'am, Rex's bond amplifies response. It's not just nose, it's calibration to handler cues under stress." She detailed ops without flourish. The Helmand track through dust storms, the Iraq alert amid chemical haze. Hale paced slowly, boots soft on the carpet, his silver eagles catching the light. This could mean sim trials for aging assets, extended duty with vet oversight, but it demands accountability. Your breach sets the tone. The meeting stretched, questions probing like a debrief, liability models, insurance riders, integration with new tech like scent drones. Outside, the base stirred. Humvees idling for afternoon patrols, the low whir of a Black Hawk on approach, rotors slicing the crisp air. Vasquez answered evenly, her voice a steady anchor, Rex unmoving as if part of the testimony. Torres nodded, tapping notes. "Preliminary, pilot program at Harlan. 10 handlers, mixed rosters, Rex as benchmark." As they wrapped, Reed pulled her aside in the antechamber, the door clicking shut behind Hale. The corridor hummed with distant radio chatter, static hissing from a passing sentry's vest. "It's moving, Vasquez, but watch your step. Media's sniffing. Local press got wind from the parents." His eyes held a warning, the captain's duty to shield the unit clashing with the breach's fallout. She saluted, the motion crisp, and led Rex out into the fading light, snowflakes melting on his coat like fleeting commendations. The press arrived 2 days later. A small crew from the Harlan Gazette and a national military outlet, their van parked discreetly at the gate, tires crunching fresh gravel. Base security vetted them in the visitor center, the air sharp with pine cleaner and the faint ozone of printers churning visitor badges. Vasquez was briefed in the PIO office, Public Information Officer, a windowless room lined with screens displaying unit timelines. "No details on the reprimand," the major instructed, her tone clipped. "Focus on the rescue. K9 excellence. Rex is the star." The interview unfolded in the K9 Memorial Garden, a quiet enclave of stone markers honoring fallen partners, the ground dusted white, benches slick with frost. Vasquez stood in dress blues, medals pinned neatly, Rex at heel in a ceremonial vest, his posture impeccable. The reporter, a wiry man with a notebook and recorder, leaned in amid the wind's soft howl through evergreens. "Sergeant, Walk us through the track. How did an aged asset outperform protocol? She recounted it methodically. The staging area's chaos, the smoke's veil, Rex's unerring line through the ravine. No drama, just facts, her voice even as the camera's red light blinked. Duty to the mission guided us. Rex served without hesitation. The parents joined briefly, the boy's mother clutching a photo, her eyes grateful as she stroked Rex's flank, the dog's tail giving a single, restrained wag. "He brought our son back," she said simply, the words carrying the human weight beneath the ranks. The story broke online that night, headlines factual yet resonant. Veteran K9 defies retirement in daring forest rescue. Views climbed, shares rippling through veteran forums and news feeds, the base's secure net buzzing with alerts. In the barracks, handlers gathered around a shared tablet. The screen's glow illuminating faces in the dim light, the scent of boot polish and damp wool heavy in the air. "Look at this," Martinez said, scrolling comments, tributes to loyalty, calls for policy reform. Peterson clapped Vasquez's shoulder lightly. "You're shifting it, Sarge." But scrutiny deepened. Hale summoned her again, the office now cluttered with printouts, the air thicker with tension. DOD's taking notice, pilot programs greenlit, but you're the face, testimony to Congress subcommittee next month. His gaze held steady, the colonel's restraint masking approval. "Earned it, Sergeant. Rex, too." Outside, the platoon drilled under floodlights, boots stamping synchronized patterns in the snow, the chain of command flexing to accommodate the breach's legacy. Vasquez walked the kennels at dusk, the paths lit by sodium lamps casting orange pools on the frost. Rex padded beside her, nose to the ground, picking up traces of the day's routines. Wet fur from baths, kibble scattered in corners. She paused at his run, the gate's latch cool under her fingers. "We opened the door, boy," she murmured, his head leaning into her hand, the bond a silent vow amid the institution's slow thaw. The reform brewed not in fanfare, but in memos and trials, integrity's quiet forge reshaping the ranks. Handlers nodded as she passed, solidarity in their salutes, the ripple widening, careers realigned, precedents etched. The base slept under stars, its pulse steady, transformed by one track through the flames. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. Months turned to seasons at Fort Harlan, the base's landscape shifting from winter's frost-laced pines to spring's tentative green, the air carrying the clean bite of thawing soil and fresh-cut hay from the adjacent fields. Vasquez's restriction lifted after the mandated 30 days, her field duties reinstated with a quiet notation in her file. No fanfare, just the procedural stamp of resolution. She resumed patrols with Shadow, the Malinois now tempered by experience, her alerts sharpening under Vasquez's steady hand. But Rex remained her Shadow, assigned to light training rotations as part of the nascent pilot program, his crate positioned prominently in the kennel block, a living emblem of the change. The reform unfolded methodically, like a well-executed drill. Hale's recommendation had ascended through channels, landing on desks in the Pentagon's Veterinary Division, where analysts pored over data under fluorescent hums and the low murmur of printers spitting reports. By early summer, the directive came down, AR 190-14 amended, extending K9 service to 10 years with mandatory biannual assessments, mobility tests on obstacle courses slick with simulated rain, scent trials in smoke-filled chambers reeking of charred wood and chemical simulants. Harlan was designated the test bed, 10 handlers, selected for mixed rosters, their sessions logged in real time via encrypted tablets, the screens glowing blue in the dim armory light. Vasquez was tapped as lead instructor, her mornings now spent in the training pavilion, a vast open-air structure of steel beams and gravel floors, where the echo of commands bounced off corrugated walls. She stood before the group, clipboard in hand, her voice cutting through the morning chill. Protocol update. Veterans like Rex integrate on dual leads during high-interference sims, observe cues, hesitation signals, fatigue, not failure. The handlers nodded, boots planted in neat rows, dogs at heel with vests snapping under the wind. Rex demonstrated first, navigating a mock burn zone laced with odor canisters, his nose questing low amid the haze from fog machines, the artificial smoke curling like ghosts. Shadow flanked him, deferring seamlessly, her youthful energy complementing his precision. A junior handler, Corporal Reyes, jotted notes, his pen scratching against paper, eyes wide at the seamless bond. Reed oversaw the sessions from the sidelines, his arms crossed, the lines on his face softened by the program's early successes. During a break, as water bottles clinked and dogs lapped from troughs with metallic splashes, he approached Vasquez near the water station, the trough's damp earth mingling with the pavilion's lingering fog. "Metrics are holding, Sergeant." Rex's alerts at 95%, outpacing the rookies. His tone carried approval, the captain's restraint yielding to results. "Your input shaped this. JAG closed the file last week. No further action." Vasquez saluted, her posture crisp, though a subtle tension eased in her shoulders. "Thank you, sir. It's the unit that adapts." Rex leaned against her leg. His flank warmed through her fatigues, a silent affirmation amid the handler's low chatter, discussions of adjusted rotations, shared logs passed hand to hand like classified briefs. The legacy rippled outward, beyond Harlan's fences. The congressional subcommittee hearing in D.C. was a closed affair, held in a marbled corridor room, where the air hummed with the whir of air handlers and the faint scent of polished leather from briefcases. Vasquez testified via secure video link from the base's comms shack, the screen's glow illuminating her face amid the tangle of cables and radio consoles. Rex sat beside the terminal, his image transmitted live, ears perked as she detailed the forest op. Timestamps, environmental factors, the ethical pivot from order to outcome. "Conscience isn't insubordination, ma'am. It's the handler's edge," she told the panel, her words measured against the static-laced feed. Torres, the consultant, followed with data projections, her slides flickering on shared screens, cost savings from extended service, morale boosts quantified in anonymous surveys from K9 units nationwide. The subcommittee nodded, questions probing like a post-mission debrief, liability caps, integration with emerging tech. By fall, the amendments passed, etched into doctrine. Veteran retention pilots rolled out to 5 bases, handlers mentored in hybrid teams, the chain of command flexing to honor experience over expiration. Media attention crested, then waned. The national outlet's follow-up piece running in veteran journals, its pages crisp with newsprint ink and embedded photos of Rex in vest, mid-track. The boy's family visited once, under vetted escort, the child now 7, his small hand extended for a pat as they stood on the parade ground, boots drilling in the distance under a vast autumn sky. "He remembers you," the mother said, her voice soft amid the wind's rustle through flags. Vasquez knelt briefly, Rex nosing the boy's palm with gentle insistence, the moment captured in no logs, just memory's quiet archive. In the kennels that evening, as sodium lights buzzed to life, casting long shadows over the runs, Vasquez ran a final check. Gates latched, water bowls filled with the cool slosh of refills. Handlers dispersed to barracks, their footsteps fading on gravel paths, the air cooling with the scent of damp leaves and distant wood smoke from controlled burns. Rex settled in his upgraded enclosure, enlarged for joint therapy, his breathing even as she secured the door. Peterson paused nearby, leading his Duke. "You're the benchmark now, Sarge. Whole program's got your print." She nodded, the weight of it settling like a well-worn ruck, symbol of moral strength, not hero, but handler, whose defiance forged reform. The institution had learned, seams mended with data and precedent, loyalty elevated from bond to protocol. As she walked the perimeter alone, the base's lights twinkling like stars against the night, Vasquez felt the transformation complete, not in glory, but in the steady hum of helicopters at dawn, dogs alert in formation, the chain unyielding yet wiser. In the quiet legacy of service, one track through fire proved that age tempers loyalty into unbreakable steel. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of They Said the K9 was too old to serve until it tracked a kid through miles of burning forest. See you in the next one.